You are listening to Single Serves. My name is Arno Marture and I am your host. Single Serves is a podcast dealing with design, architecture, business, and city building in which I interview an expert on a specific subject matter. Together, we dive into that topic and challenge conventional thinking in a thought-provoking conversation. For our inaugural season, we have some great guests lined up, and you can expect to hear about such topics like social media for architects, organizational culture, criticism in media, and architects not practicing architecture, among many others. I sincerely hope that you will find these conversations as engaging as I did and learn a thing or two in the process. Don't forget to send us your comments, criticism, and praise. To do so, you can email us at hello@rvltr.studio or leave a comment online. You can also subscribe to the podcast on our website at rvltr.studio. Catherine Krug is the product director at R-Hauz, which provides prefabricated residential buildings for landowners and real estate investors. Catherine is responsible for the design outcome, meaning defining and optimizing the R-Hauz product line in terms of user needs and functionality, marketability, and pricing. R-Hauz came to be in 2018 to provide affordable and sustainable housing for urban families. They design, build, and deliver turnkey mass timber residential buildings that can be customized to fit the market needs. This is our third installment in the mass timber series of interviews that we've had on this podcast. Check out episodes 108 and 204 with Andrew Waugh and Michael Green, respectively. So thank you very much, Catherine, for being on the show.
Thank you, Arno, for having me. Pleased to be here.
So let's start with a really hard question. And can you tell us who you are and what you do in 3 sentences or less?
Oh, 3 sentences. Okay. So my name is Catherine Krug. I am the product director at Arthouse Solutions. So that means that I am responsible for the outcome of what we build, and I speak for the client's voice in our design. And I also collaborate across the disciplines in the design and construction of our repeatable buildings.
That's perfect. So short and sweet, how I like it.
Okay.
Can you tell us what the Arthouse mission is exactly?
So the Arthouse mission is really to provide new forms of housing types that can fit within the urban fabric of the city of Toronto and then in other urban areas. So we have building models that can fit on main streets, and we have building models that can fit seamlessly into lower scale residential neighborhoods. And it's really about providing homeowners and property owners with the ability to self-solve housing needs for both themselves and for the city at large.
So does that mean that you're bypassing the whole design process and you sell turnkey solutions? Or is there still architects and designers involved?
It's a little of both. So we do have the architects and designers involved in the design from inception of our products. And what we do with that is create a repeatable building model. And those can be sold as a product to homeowners in a turnkey format. So it does really take away a lot of the back and forth and the lengthy process that's often associated with building projects, especially in urban areas.
Mm-hmm, that makes sense. So we heard a lot about the missing middle in Toronto and elsewhere, but particularly in Toronto. So can you tell us what the missing middle is in your own words, and how does R-Hauz contribute to solving that challenge?
Sure. So the missing middle, to me, it's something I encounter professionally and also personally. I'm a young urban professional living in downtown Toronto, so I am personally very familiar with the difficulties of acquiring housing that isn't on one of two extremes, either in a very tall high-rise condo or a ground-related detached home, which is completely unaffordable to myself and a lot of other people, I think, who are in my shoes.
To mere mortals, yeah.
Yeah. So with that landscape, we don't have a lot of options for people who want something that's a little more in the middle, the missing middle. So we're providing at R-Hauz a solution that can be at a scale that's a little more humanized, a little more pedestrian friendly for people to live in without having to be a multimillionaire or have the funds to buy a house, or if you want something that's a little bigger than the standard cookie cutter 500 square foot condo. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I live in one myself right now and it's fine. But we thought adding a little more variety to the urban fabric would be something that would be well received by property owners and by also the city approval authorities that we work with.
Yeah, and that's 500 square foot condo. You can't raise a family in it. So it works for a certain population, but not for others. So that makes a lot of sense. And so you just mentioned the fact that you're bringing a product to market that responds to a demand. How has the response been so far?
Actually, the response has been very good. We've had a lot of interest in the multi-unit projects. So those are 6-story, we call them townhouses, but they are multi-unit buildings. Mm-hmm. And they have had a great reception because they're just so unique compared to what else is on the market right now. Because we do offer, a smaller scale building, and especially during COVID, it's been well received because we don't have common corridors. We don't have a lot of common space in the building. We have a lobby that you enter and walk up an elevator or walk up a set of stairs or take the elevator directly to your unit. So you're still living in a building with maybe a dozen other people, but it's a much more livable scale, I think, for people. And especially right now in COVID, it's been very popular. So that's with our laneway or our multi-unit housing. And then we have our laneway suites, which have also had a lot of interest as the city has introduced permissions to allow for laneway housing in the city. And we're seeing a lot of response from people using them. We thought it would be a lot for rental units, which we are seeing, but a lot of people want to use them to house family members, which is another interesting application for multi-generational housing and also a little more missing middle housing fitting into the urban landscape.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the townhouse product is called R-Town. And do you have a name for the laneway, the smaller designs that you sell as well?
Yeah, we're calling those R-Lane.
R-Lane.
Sticking with the R theme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It works. It's memorable. So you mentioned COVID a second ago. Like, how has it impacted your company?
Yeah, it's been quite a ride, as I'm sure it has been for everybody. We our company switched to working from in an office setting into a remote setting, which actually the transition worked out pretty well because everyone who works here is pretty tech savvy. So it worked out. A bigger complication was that we were in the middle of the construction of our pilot project in the spring when COVID hit. So we did experience some delay regarding COVID and the construction shutdown that we were forced to take. But other than that, once the restrictions were lifted, we were able to continue on fairly as scheduled because there aren't that many workers on the site either. When we're building with mass timber, it's a smaller project, so it's a little easier to get around the COVID or to abide by the COVID restrictions that are in place with distancing and masking.
So has the increased interest in your products as a result of COVID led to new projects for you guys?
Yeah, that's kind of hard to answer because COVID happened very, very early in the inception of the company.
Yeah.
So it's our first building. So it's hard to know what the comparison might have been if COVID never happened. So that's a bit of a trickier.
That's okay. It's okay
question.
To not have an answer.
Okay.
So we talked a little bit about the missing middle and what that means for R-Hauz and its line of products. What is the relationship of the missing middle to housing affordability, and how does that play in with the Arthouse mission?
I guess I would say that the relationship between missing middle and housing affordability just means that there aren't a lot of options that are in the middle. So we have housing options that are very expensive right now, and then we have housing options that are relatively less expensive. They're still quite expensive in many cases. But what we wanted to offer at Arthouse as part of our mission was housing solutions that can fit into places that people want to be living. So we're seeing a lot of interest because our products can be built on main streets that are served by transit, that have walkable amenities, that have local shops, local pubs and restaurants to visit. And that's a really attractive part of our building, I would say. And it also provides more rental stock to the city. So the plan is to really scale the R town and have lots and lots of these across the city and really bolster the housing supply, which we feel is a good way to create more housing options and more affordability with more supply.
So do you guys have an objective in the next few years, decade or so, of how many R towns you'd like to build? Or is that a secret?
Hundreds.
Hundreds?
Hundreds. We don't want to stop. There's nothing really to limit us. We're ready to, scale across the city. We're ready to move into other cities, other jurisdictions in the province and across the country. And we're already starting to work in some other municipalities. So we can expect to see more of this growth happening, not just in Toronto, but in other urban centers in the country.
That's great. So let's go back to the designs themselves a little bit. And what makes our town special?
Sure. So I think one of the best things about the buildings, one of the things I mentioned is the scale of the building, that you're in a more, you're in a building with fewer units. So you have a little more familiarity with your neighbors. It's a little more a friendly neighborhood setting in terms of the scale. But I think what's really special about the design of the suites themselves is that we really take sustainability seriously, and we really take the concept of well-being in the place you're living seriously and incorporate that into our designs. So rather than what, like I was describing with typical condo units, we have actually through units in our buildings. So you have windows on the front and the back. So you have multiple access to light, and you have opportunity for ventilation by opening your windows and having cross ventilation through. And the size of the units themselves is quite generous. They're around 800 square feet. They can be configured in different ways as well. So it's meant to have the building grow with the owner's desire or intention. So if they wanted to keep the units all as one bedrooms, they can do that. If they wanted to modify some and create additional bedrooms, they have the flexibility to do that over time, or go back to one bedrooms. So the flexibility is a really unique aspect, I think, to the design.
Yeah, and it's mostly prefab, right? Can you talk a little bit about the building process, design process, building process, and how it's assembled once it's on site?
Sure. So we do design, as you said, prefab, CLT mass timber. So we have a number of designs that we have done that are meant to fit within the common lot sizes across the city. So on main streets, we typically have 20-foot frontages. And so we have designed to accommodate for those 20 feet, a single self-sustained building with an elevator. But then that can be repeated over a series of adjacent lots. So you can go from a 20-foot to a 40 to an 80-foot building. It's always going to be at 6-story height generally, but we can go taller as building codes, evolve to allow for more height.
Very slowly.
Very slowly.
And so you could realistically have an entire block frontage that would be made of units, right?
Absolutely. Yes. And we also, we don't provide for underground space in the buildings as well. It's all at grade. So that there's minimal disruption to the surrounding area during the construction process as well. So the prefab building coming in with wood panels means we're not pouring concrete, we're not creating lots of dust. We're very clean and minimally impactful to the neighbors.
So is that model designed to not have any room for cars, or you accommodate that in a different way?
Yeah, we do accommodate for cars. We've got surface parking for the building, but that's located at the rear and it's accessible from a rear lane.
That's an interesting, so the mass timber structure is CLT. Do you have CLT panels for the walls as well? So it's all almost 100% prefab, and then you just go in and do the finishes and fixtures and stuff, right?
That's right. So we build the panels in a factory setting, and then they're shipped to the site. So we can actually erect the structure in a matter of weeks. It's very fast to go up. It's two-story panels on a 6-story building. So you can imagine it's pretty fast and straightforward. And then, as you said, yes, we do the finishings after the structure is done.
And I assume because you don't dig down for parking, you save a ton on construction too, right?
Absolutely.
Construction costs. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
You touched briefly on the sustainability of the whole design, but can you tell us a little more about that? What does sustainability mean for R-Hauz, and how your models specifically, how each is sustainable?
Sure. So I can speak to it in a couple of categories. So one is the mass timber itself as a material versus traditional concrete. So mass timber being a naturally renewable resource, we're happy to be using that as a construction material and minimizing our carbon footprint by using mass timber and creating less construction waste. Because since we design the panels off-site, you can really do your quality control and make sure you're only cutting as much wood as needed to be shipped out to the site. So we're minimizing, material waste. We're minimizing transportation in the actual construction by using mass timber. So that's the first aspect. And then the second aspect, I would say, is in the actual building itself, with the envelope being, it's a very tight, robust envelope. So the need for power heating systems is very minimal. We actually power our buildings with electricity. So there's no natural gas. And that also helps to minimize our carbon footprint with a clean energy system. And then we use the standard Energy Star appliances. We have low flow fixtures for our plumbing, and really just minimize the amount of resources.
So now that you just completed the pilot project, as far as I can tell, what were the biggest challenges for you guys with this first one?
So the COVID, that's almost like I'm repeating myself again, but the COVID impacts were a bit difficult. There's a lot of, disruption to supply chains that I think R-Hauz, and there probably isn't a builder out there who isn't experiencing issues related to the supply chain right now, that we don't really have a forecast on when it's going to change or how it's going to change. But that is one of the challenges that we're going to be working with. But we're still, despite that, we're committed to our mission of fixed timelines and fixed costs, so that we can really keep delivering a repeatable product. So the idea is to keep building and improving on our first pilot project into subsequent projects. And despite those challenges, we're going to make it work.
So when's the next one breaking ground?
The next one should be breaking ground, I think, in the early next year in the west end of the city. So our pilot project is in the east end of Toronto, and we are working to start construction in the Etobicoke area in the next few months. Will be our next one.
Oh, that's cool. That's near where I live.
Oh, good.
So we've touched briefly on how many of those you'd like to build, but what are the next steps from a more concrete perspective for R-Hauz? You're going to break ground on new projects. What's the next big thing for you guys?
So I think one of the next big things is the rollout of garden suites. So that will be the laneway zoning that came into force a couple of years ago. The city has looked at that, and then they've realized that, okay, we have about just under 50,000 properties that could qualify for laneway housing, but we have upwards of 400,000 properties that could qualify for garden suites. And so what a garden suite is a building in a backyard, but there's no laneway attached. So the access is through the front of the property, but it would be an even smaller scale build than the laneway suite. But there are lots of opportunities because of just the quantity of properties that would qualify and could be interested in having this as an extension of their own home, or as an accessory dwelling for a family member, or a small rental property to earn some extra income. So we're excited to see that as it starts to roll out, probably in the next early 2022. we're in.
Oh, you think they were going to change the zoning as soon as that time?
They've been working on it through this year. So the latest I heard was that the end of 2020, fall 2020, we'd be seeing it come into force.
Well, I hope you're right, because they're usually a lot slower than that. But I can't wait to see what those products look like. So that concludes the interview. Thank you very much, Catherine, for your time and enthusiasm. And I wish you the best of luck in everything you guys do.
Oh, thanks so much, Arnaud. It was really great speaking with you.
Hey, Arnaud here. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and that you'll come back for more. Please share with your friends and colleagues, and remember to subscribe on our website at rvltr.studio. Until next time, ciao.